Exactly, it's encased in plastic, and then you basically zip tie it to the ladder.
Oh.
Or, not the ladder, anywhere that's not gonna obstruct. And I'll show you examples of where people put it.
Okay.
We're gonna show you what an industry standard inspection looks like with today's digital camera. If you were getting a report on anything and you don't get photos, something's wrong. We don't have time to read, we have time to see. Talk about the lead. Every fire escape older than 1978 is presumed to have lead. So for you to touch a fire escape, you have to be EPA registered and EPA renovator. What that means is you can't weld on a fire escape, which has been the traditional Mickey Mouse way of fixing a fire escape. You weld it, you can't do it anymore. The good thing about that is not all fire escapes are welded. 98% of all the fire escapes in the United States are bolted connection fire escapes. Weld was never intended to be the fix, because when you weld it, you leave the rust inside. So what we say is that now that the EPA says you can't weld it because you can't burn lead, you must register with the EPA and you must be a licensed EPA renovator. Everybody is already, to a certain degree, an EPA renovator anyway, and here's what all it takes. If you're a contractor and you're a painter, you go get this license anyway. It costs $300 for you to register your firm with EPA, so they love that. You take a weekend course, 8 hours, and it's $150 to $300 on average for that course. And you start the class in the morning, you have coffee in the middle of the day. By the end of the day, they hand you a certificate. That's how simple.
After
the
test.
there's no test, but they give you the answers throughout the whole day. So they give you the answers the whole day, and then you take a test at the end of the day on the test you just took all day. And you have your EPA renovator's license. Then you basically know how to wear the white suit, how to put on plastic gloves, with a simple mask, collect all the chips, everything associated with anything related to lead paint. Inside a building, my God, I have to put a plastic wall, there's all thing. Outside, it's like, okay, put a plastic down, 20 feet, collect the chips, close it up. So much easier at the outside. But inside, my God, it becomes, it's a real training exercise. You're gonna be licensed in both. We talk about all the classes that we teach at the academies, and in most cases, when we get brought in by an association, you get continuing ed credits. If we go there directly, there's no credits here because you have to go through every state in order to you have to pass this rigorous thing where I'm going to give you credits, but then I'd be charging you to come in the door and all kinds of things. But we perform these classes. We'll talk about what fire escape engineers and what we can do, and that we're the only fire escape company in the nation. We're like shoe cobbling, you know what I'm saying? So that's our second activity that we're going to be starting is when we're not doing fire escapes, we're going to fix shoes because there's nobody else doing that either. So, but only $1,000 to $3,000 shoes we'll fix. And we'll talk about what licenses are out there, including the Reg 4, okay? And if you look on the very back, this happened in Boston. This is what changed our code out there, and it's usually a tragedy that happens to a fireman or a tenant, and this happened to the tenant just when she thought it was safe, and we have a statement that says fire escapes can either save lives or take them. He was able to save himself by grabbing the ladder. She and her niece fell away. The woman died, and the niece fell on her, and that happened over 40 years ago. So, if you look at the front cover, this is a fireman's worst nightmare because it doesn't have a tag on it. Because the firemen in the back of their mind, they see this happening to them on every fire escape they're ever going to get on. Because for 75 years, nobody's ever done anything about it. So, with that being the case, now I'll just be going along and talking about the slideshow. And we're going to go very quickly into the code.
You want me to sit there and punch it in?
Just
Okay. Forgot to click.
so I don't know if you want to
Yeah, I'm looking for that.
kill the lights. I think you can kill just that side. I think we should be good. How's that, guys?
Great.
Okay.
Close video, okay.
So again, it's interactive. I'll move along as quickly as I can so that we're not here for too long. So we'll really kill the hell out of the code. And then as soon as we're done with that, we'll get into like what makes up fire escapes. We'll answer any questions related to fire escapes. The Reg 4 tester program, again, I'll try to reference things that I was told by Darrell and or by Patrick Killian and say this is what they want and this is what applies. But let's take a look at it. This is a problem. This is the fear. How do you get out? Fire escapes are supposed to be for self-evacuation. They're not made for firemen. They're made for me to get out of my building, get away, and then when the firemen arrive 1 minute, 10 minutes, or an hour later, they use it to get into the building if needed, or they use it to get out of the building in case all hell breaks loose. You're looking at fire escape awareness. We've been doing these classes nationwide. Fire escape engineers, what we are is basically the second half of fire escape services. Fire escape services repairs and paints fire escapes. Has its own insurance, has its own workers' comp. Fire escape engineers has to have its own separate company, has to have it, and it only inspects, certifies, and load tests. Reason being is because you got a lot of companies out there that sometimes when you do both, you have to be very careful with you guys, that sometimes you have to have, possibly you have to check with your insurance. We just realized this when we had an incident that happened in Chicago that made us aware that we truly need two types of company. One that truly just inspects, so it's sort of like on your end would be a small A+ inspection side of it only, independent, unique, boom, but it has the service brand on the backside. So we'll talk to you about how to do that so that in case something happens, you have two insurance companies to deal with the situation, okay? So that's an important fact. As we mentioned before, the National Fire Escape Association.org is fairly new, so please pardon the issues.
Right now, firefighters are taking down the ladders and rolling up the hoses. But earlier in the night, when they pulled up, there were flames coming out of the side of the building. Firefighters say it was one of the scarier moments because when you pull up to a building and you see children and mothers hanging off the side of the fire escape, smoke swirling around them, they said that's scary, scary stuff. They got up there, they got the ladders up, and they said nobody got hurt.
The fire escape, there was 3 or 4 people hanging off the fire escape. They couldn't get off. They were just on the fire escapes. I had people hanging in the fire escapes at the rear of the building, and on this side of the building, we had a bunch of people on that fire escape.
About 50 people were displaced inside this building. However, firefighters say there's good news tonight. It looks like everybody will be allowed to go back in except the one unit where the fire was in. They said that's good luck to them tonight. I'm Bob Wilson, on the scene of Bridgeport, News 8.
Wow. How many of you have trained your 8-year-old child how to come down a ladder that's not working? So that didn't make sense, you know. We inspected this fire escape right after this incident. Probably 3 months later, they called us in to inspect this out of Bridgeport, Connecticut. And the main thing is that the firefighter says, hey, yeah, I arrived and I got people stuck on the fire escape. Somebody was able to take a shot of a child, you know, coming down a ladder all by herself. Would you like to have your child be dangling 14 feet off the ground coming down the fire escape by herself? Because you can't be next to her, you can't hold her, you can't walk with her, because it's a ladder that wouldn't come down. So on the fire side, what that means is this is not a firefight. This is a rescue mission. You get to any building and you got people trapped anywhere, the first thing you do is you rescue people first, you fight fire second. So here's a building blazing along and they gotta get people off the fire escapes first, who are supposed to get off the fire escapes all by themselves. And for some reason the ladders didn't work, something's not coming down. And so this guy's saying 50 people, you know, we gotta get them off the building. But thank God only one apartment burned. Well, how long you need for an apartment to burn? 3 to 5 minutes? Done. So this is the kind of stuff that they have. So the next one that really started this whole national training fire escape awareness program happened in the East Coast in Rhode Island. Station Night Fire, remember? 100 people died in that, you know, when the great band, what was it, the pyrotechnical, you know, in the room like this full of that foam and stuff like that. It's okay, fireworks. And he basically lit the whole place on fire because it was all full of that foam that just burns like crazy. And so the 100 people, there was 300 people in the room, but 100 people didn't make it out because by the time this thing started and all the fire exits were chained or whatever, this thing basically, the smoke knocked everybody out and then the fire consumed them. But only about 200 out of the 300 got out, 100 died in this little rinky-dink nightclub. Well, right away, the Channel 7 news reporter came up and she was calling around, and she called me just out of nowhere, so it wasn't anything planned. And she said, I want to do a piece on fire escapes to tell people that in case of fire, you use your fire escape. I says, oh, by the way, do you know that 80% of the fire escapes I inspect fail? He goes, no way, we got laws, we got this. So I said, yeah, way, and she goes, no, I don't believe you. So I basically took this news reporter, Hank Filthy Ryan, nicknamed Bulldog, she's about yay high, and when she attaches her teeth to something, she'll rip down to the bone. And so what's supposed to be a 1-minute piece actually became a 4-minute piece because she didn't believe what I was telling her. So I said, well, I'll train you, come down to the center of town. We went to downtown, and then I went to the theater district. I said, let me train you about fire escapes. I get her a 15-minute class on how to spot fire escapes that are problematic, whether it be general rust, broken treads, rusty connections. 15 minutes. She goes, okay, now show me some fire escapes. I says, no, walk around any way you want, and you tell me which one's passed. So she did. She walked around, and her 1-minute piece now became this.
The smoke, the flames, and the frightened faces, all in a firefighter's line of duty. But Chief William Hitchcock remembers the night it wasn't the fire that almost stopped him,
Oh, I was scared to death.
but the fire escape that broke underneath him.
When the random just came away from the building.
And our investigation found across Massachusetts more unsafe fire escapes, rusty, deteriorating, crumbling, broken. And what state officials didn't know, the system they set up to keep fire escapes safe is also falling apart.
The potential ramifications are disastrous.
So let's look at this one. This expert ironworker is licensed to build, maintain, and inspect fire escapes. So that over here, for months, we examined dozens of them with alarming results.
Looking at this today, would this pass inspection?
No.
In dormitories, at theaters, at homes, and apartment buildings.
Rust is actually eating away the metal of the fire escape.
Right.
And the bottom line?
It'll get weak and then eventually it'll fall.
This one has rotted connections. This one missing bolts, twisted metal.
Would the stairs come down?
No, never come down.
This one a broken tread.
So how dangerous is it for the people inside this building?
This fire escape is definitely going to put somebody either in the hospital or it's going to put somebody in a cemetery.
Fire escapes are so critical. The state building code requires they be certified for structural adequacy and safety every 5 years. But our investigation found that safeguard is simply being ignored. Here's proof. We chose fire escapes at random in Boston, Somerville, Cambridge, Worcester, and here in Quincy. We checked building department files
But there's no fire escape certification.
to see if building owners had submitted their mandatory inspection reports.
There's no certification in this one either.
Bottom line, not one we checked in Quincy had been certified as safe. And the Director of Inspectional Services admitted because of staffing shortages, the city has no idea how many other fire escape owners are breaking the rules.
And as a result, do you know how many fire escapes in your city are safe? Or not?
Well, I don't know.
In Worcester, not one we checked was certified. In Somerville,
No.
4 more fire escapes,
To the fall through the cracks? Yeah.
not one up-to-date certification. And again, no system for keeping track.
How can they get away with that?
I guess that the shortest answer of all is because we don't have the resources to sit here and follow up on these things.
If structural deficiencies are reported, local building inspectors can actually evacuate residents until repairs are made.
Would you talk to us on camera about this? No?
But when we surveyed 24 more communities, most admitted they had no idea how many fire escapes were certified. In Taunton, inspectors told us they haven't seen a certification in 25 years. Northampton officials said it's a cold day in hell when that happens. In Cambridge, too, not one of our test buildings was certified, and the official in charge would not come out to discuss it. In Boston, where there are more than 8,000 fire escapes, again, according to inspectional services, not one we checked was certified. Officials know they are required to enforce the building code, but they admit they don't always know if owners are breaking the law.
The building code is being ignored.
Right, but it's difficult to write a violation when you don't have knowledge of something like that.
But state officials say for a critical issue like this, communities should know. And they warn the Massachusetts building code is not optional.
Does it worry you that these fire escapes are not being certified?
This is an important issue and should not be ignored.
That's because after the smoke and flames begin, it'll be too late to learn you've got no way out.
I can't stress enough, Hank, that these things have to be maintained and someone's got to be watching.
As a result of our investigation, state officials will now issue an alert to local inspectors. Meanwhile, if there's a fire escape on your home or office, you can contact your local building department to make sure it's properly certified. In the newsroom, I'm Hank Fellaby-Ryan.
So,
I didn't recognize you.
That was his twin.
It's my twin younger brother. But this is what it took to change our law down there, because before it used to be maintained at all times. So now you saw that piece, and you can take the word Boston out of there, and you can put LA in there. And we have plenty of videos of what downtown LA looks like. We have plenty of videos of what downtown Seattle looks like. We have plenty of videos of every major downtown, because we inspect nationwide. So what are some comments you guys have on that one video that you have a question about that I can answer right now? Agree, disagree with it? Concerned about it?
It was something I never really gave a lot of thought to until my customer wanted an inspection and I contacted your company. It just was not in my consciousness, and I would just wonder how many other building owners or people.
Well, we call it the foster child of egress. Depending on the crowd, we can also call it the bastard child of egress. Out of sight, out of mind, 50 to 75 years outside, in the rain. The only thing it gets is a paint coat. It gets no other attention, no other love, no other structural review, and a good bolt, and let's talk about that. If I put a brand new bolt today in, and I got a tight connection, are you concerned about it today? Is it pretty much guaranteed? Anything happens, who do we sue?
Manufacturer?
The manufacturer of that bolt. So the manufacturer has standards to make that bolt, so we put that bolt in today, that's the guarantee because you put in a bolt today. Somebody put in a bolt 50, 75, 100 years ago, and you go there and you look at it, it still looks great. There's no visible rust, no penetration, nothing's going on. Tell me, can you guarantee that bolt? Is the manufacturer still around that put in that sold that bolt? Does the law have anything right now that when you are looking at a good to excellent bolt, you need to give them a guarantee?
You would think if it was part of a fire escape assembly, they would have some sort of load-bearing requirement.
So that's called a load test.
Yeah.
So that is, it's already in the law. We'll cover that right now. So the load test, okay? The load test is what you use when something is good, but old. You do that to old sprinkler heads. You do that to old ladders. You do that to old pumps. You do that to some form of test. Well, fire escape assemblies have a load test. And that load test is to give the word guarantee to somebody. So that word guarantee is saying, hey, it really looks good, but that's just my opinion. You want a guarantee? Then the load test makes everybody unsuable. Because as soon as I perform a load test, can the owner of that building, if something horrific happens on that fire escape, can the owner sue the city if there was a load test performed?
Probably not.
Can they sue the company that performed the load test if it was a successful load test?
They could try, I guess.
But it passed.
Yeah.
Can they sue the company? Can they sue the engineer that witnessed the load test happening and it passed? Can he sue the engineer if a load test was performed on an old bolt?
Not if it passed.
No, not if it passed. So basically, you get the guarantee, and everybody can't be sued. Because what was done was what the law says, do this, and nobody gets sued. Now, something happened, some freakazoidal thing occurred, who cares? That's what they have the insurance company come in. Because the insurance company says, what steps did you take to guarantee this? Well, the law said this, we did that. The law says sign off on this, we did that. And the law says do nothing else but that. Okay, so now the insurance company picks up because some freakazoidal thing occurred, and that's their problem now. But nobody can be dragged in. So this is what happened in Boston This one appealed to prize for this photograph. And she did die, and the diesel landed on her. Look at all the fire escape pieces coming down along with them. 4 stories.
What happened to the firefighter?
He grabbed with one hand. Let's take a look at the codes. There's one code that you want to write down for yourselves. And I'm going to mention this code, and I'm going to end up on the on your California code. That was told to me yesterday. I don't know every code in the book, but usually when I have an inspector or somebody in the class, they'll tell me what code they refer to. And then I say, great, let's see how it ties into these other codes. Every code in the United States is based off these 3 codes. And this is what you want to use forever whenever you speak with your clients related to anything related to the fire escape. Let's start with the International Fire Code. Every fire code in the nation is based off this code, and they didn't change one word. Every code steals from the codes, the International Fire Code, International Building Code, and then the International, the NFPA Life Safety Code. So let's start here. The fire code, actually let's start with NFPA. They say it the clearest. The authority having jurisdiction shall be permitted to approve any fire escape stair that has been shown by load test. I'll stop there. So the authority having jurisdiction is not the engineer, it's the fire official. And if you don't make him happy, if you don't satisfy him, because he has a guarantee, it comes every day in the form of a load test. So that's what he'll accept. You got a load test for me? Great, it passed. Sprinklers, right? Load test, right? Elevators, load test, okay, thank you. Did you do anything else? Well, the other evidence of strength, other satisfactory evidence to have adequate strength is the ore, okay? So you want to give me an ore? You want to load test this elevator? I'll use it as an example. Or do you want to totally refurbish the elevator to avoid the load test? If an elevator, I'm not aware whether or not they'll allow such a thing to happen, but if an elevator is brand new, will they need to load test it?
Probably, yeah.
If it's brand new?
Well, it has to pass the initial inspection.
It passes the initial inspection. Fire escapes are the same. If we put up a brand new fire escape, we don't have to load test it. If we refurbish a fire escape to like-new condition, we don't have to load test it. That's the other evidence of strength. Now, if I take an existing fire escape and I spot repair some bolts on it, those are guaranteed, correct? In case somebody gets hurt because of that bolt, who do we sue? The manufacturer. The remaining square head bolts and rivets, 50 to 75 years old, made by some guy that's no longer alive. What's the only way I can guarantee those to equal the guarantee of the new bolts?
Load test.
Load test. Or I can make the client aware that I can just pull out those bolts, even though they're good to excellent. There's another thing we can do. We can leave rivets and bolts where they are, and behind them, next to them, near them, what do? Put in a fresh new bolt. So don't think you have to change every bolt. You can either change them at whatever faster and quicker and cheaper to the client. But you can also reinforce a bolt with a backup bolt. Now you're at 200% of what's required there. So every now and then people say, don't leave my bolts, just give me backup bolts everywhere. Now do I need to load test that fire escape that has been refurbished to like new condition? So that means I've met the NFPA Life Safety Code. Now let's talk about the International Fire Code. Testing and certification, ready? Any fire escape system that has been found in a state of deterioration or unsafe shall be repaired immediately, standard, depending upon structural condition. What's that mean? Who's making that determination?
The inspector.
The inspector. The city official says, depending on the structural condition, a load test shall be conducted. So it says, depending. So is there an or in there? Yes, there is. So depending on the condition, a load test. So I'm going to try to convince the state that uses International Fire Code as their main thing. I'm going to say, hey, dude, I don't want to do a load test. Can I do the or? What's the or? Well, the or is I'm going to give you satisfactory evidence that I've refurbished the fire escape to avoid the load test. Okay? So now he says, well, I'm going to have to speak with my my building and safety guys. So, okay, well, they're probably off the International Building Code, and they say, testing and certification, all exterior fire escape systems shall be examined and or tested, then certified or certified. So what's that mean? I think it means the same thing that NFPA says. examined and or tested, and certified. What's certified mean? Certified means satisfactory evidence to have adequate strength. Tested means load tested. So the building code, the fire code, and the NFPA all say what? Something very simple. Everything starts with a load test. But we don't want a load test. It's very costly. Doesn't buy any paint, doesn't buy any bolts. We always want to work towards the other evidence of strength. You're supposed to load test fire escapes every 5 years. You refurbish a fire escape, the average life cycle for load testing is every 20 to 25 years. You still perform the 5-year inspections, but there's no need for a load test because you're going to be providing the inspector for the next 20 years the fact that you just rebuilt this thing 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. Maybe in the 20th or the 25th cycle, the guy goes, you know what, can we load test it? He goes, yeah, let's load test it. That's just the bolts. How about the connections back into the building? How do you see those? Those are buried in the 12 to 18 inches deep. So you want to open it up. Otherwise, how do you load test the wall? You load test it. Is there an ore for the wall? The answer is yes. So you're either able to see the plates from the back of the wall, you're either able to drill a hole next to the existing and put a probe down there and photograph it all the way in, or, and we'll show you that, how about if we just duplicate the connection? Leave the connection alone, give them a brand new Hilti bolt about 5 inches away, 8 to 12 inches deep, and plugs it into the wall. Now you're at 200% of what used to be tying it back to the building. Now do I need a load test? So everything is to avoid the load test, right? So yesterday's class, I'm going to skip out of here for a second. I didn't have a chance to update this slide, so bear with me for a second. And the
Zoomed up.
yeah, I'm just going to read it to you guys. I want you guys to write down this code. I was given this by, this is the California code. For some reason, it's under 4604.17.5, materials and strength. Components of the fire escape stairs shall be constructed of non-combustible materials. Fire escape stairs and balconies shall support the dead load plus live load layer of not less than 100 pounds per square foot, standard. And fire escape stair and balcony shall be provided with a top and an intermediate handrail on each side. Oh, look at this code. The fire code official is authorized to require testing or other satisfactory evidence of strength that an existing fire escape stair meets the requirements of this section. Does that sound familiar? The authority having jurisdiction shall accept a load test or other satisfactory evidence. Does that sound familiar?
Is this NFPA?
No, this is your California code.
California Fire Code, or California Building Code?
I think this is fire code.
Okay,
When you look on the building code, you know what they say?
same thing.
No, they say see the fire code.
Okay.
So this is what happens. Now, we find it, it's okay, but what's most important is this an exact statement of what we showed you before, or is it a similar statement saying the same thing?
I think it's a similar statement.
So, the fire code official is authorized, so the authority having jurisdiction, is authorized to require testing, shall accept by load test, or other satisfactory evidence, which is the same thing as the NFPA, that the existing fire escape meets the requirements, which is 100 pounds per square foot. So the authority having jurisdiction shall accept by load test or other evidence of strength. There's the quick statement. So what are you guys going to be doing when you're inspecting your fire escape? Reg 4 testers inspect the ladder, drops down twice, smoothly hits the ground, goes back up, reset the system, done. You're supposed to now, based on the new inspection document, which is great, because there was never one so clearly defined just for fire escapes. And we submitted a lot of documentation to the city over the past 5 years of all our standard testing, and it's a compliment whether or not they used some of it to outline theirs, but we didn't really help them make that, but they've had our documentation from Boston, Seattle, Chicago. We've created the only confidence test, but it's for a full system. This test that you have on the Reg 4 testers is just for the ladder equipment. But as you know, in the ladder equipment, what does it also do? It tells you to turn around now and look at the rest of the system and do what?
Inspect it.
And it's not telling you to inspect it.
Well, it's asking you certain
It's
specific points about the
Exactly.
material that's on that fire escape.
And if you see anything that concerns you, to note it.
Right.
Because if all of a sudden your ladder goes up and down and you are ready to pass the ladder, but yet you turn around, the fire escape is not painted, and the fire escape has other deficiencies such as rusty treads, bad connections into the wall, that's just your opinion, but are you performing a fire escape inspection?
No, because we're not authorized.
You're not authorized. So, but you're authorized to make a point because now they have to refer it to building and safety to create what? A need for a 5-year structural review done by a fire escape engineer, structural engineer, or others authorized to the official.
If everything passes except it hasn't been painted, would the inspection not pass?
There's two, if I may, let me just put this thing back on. Okay, must be structurally sound, must be kept painted. The code says anything that's, the International Fire Code, deterioration or unsafe. So, it's still, if the fire escape has not been kept painted on the Reg 4 testers, it's not something you could note as a deficiency. But if you let a fire escape rust, it attacks the connections, making it structurally unsafe. So it's that fine line that we're still walking, but that's okay. It needs further clarification to say an unpainted fire escape is evidence of an unsafe structure. I can prove that today. Because if I can prove to you that by the time the surface of a fire escape rots out, I can prove to you today that it came from a structural connection, then what's that an indicator of? Damage. So by the time you see gangrene on my foot, can I save my foot?
Yeah, it's too late.
It's too late. So we're trying to say that if the fire escape is full of surface rust, to fully surface rust a fire escape takes 15 to 25 years of neglect. And all that rust started at a connection, and it's proven in court cases that all the surface rust, it will be proved today that fire escapes rot from the inside out, never from the outside in. How many people have seen a car door on your car rot from the outside in? It always rots from the inside out. By the time you see all the rot on your door, what's the inside of your door look like? Same thing applies here. So we need to further clarify that a rusty fire escape is a deficiency based on what we just learned that says that rust came from a connection that is now compromised and suspect. So I have structural concerns. It's going to go to public safety anyway. It's going to need a repair permit. And it's now going to get out of the Reg 4 side of things for 1 year. Once it gets repaired properly, and through permits, and then it gets signed off, the total testing of that fire escape, as I was told, is now handled by public safety with a fire official that's part of their group is going to be part of that whole thing. But there's not a Reg 4 retest, because under the permit there's no Reg 4 retest for that year. The year after it's been brought back to service under the load test or other satisfactory evidence of strength, Reg 4 picks it up again. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, well, that's the system as it is.
Because you have a fire escape assembly's license, correct?
Correct.
Do you also have, are you part of the Reg 4 or the city officials? City officials?
Actually, my company is fire alarm and fire sprinkler.
Okay, so do you have a Reg 4 testing license here in LA also or no?
Yes, we do.
So do you have fire escape side of it at all?
No.
How many, what are the licenses you do have?
We have, in Reg 4, it's just fire sprinklers.
Fire sprinklers.
We use subcontractors and strategic.
Well, maybe you guys should get together. You have three licenses, correct?
Yeah, well, we do all water delivery systems, fire escapes, and fire doors.
Correct. So it's A+, and what's the name of yours again?
VFS Fire.
VFS.
Yeah.
Perfect, so this is how a lot of the guys are gonna get to meet each other, because not everybody has every license, and you know what's the most undesirable license? Fire escape license. Because you can't make any money in it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? People got it all depending, if you got your license really early in life, you kinda got handed to you. Oh, by the way, would you like this license? And you didn't have to have as much knowledge you need to have today in order to get the same license. So we're clear on this, right? You guys are understanding that what is fire escape. So now, as we start going forward, that thing about the painting, if proven through here, we're basically gonna be able to say, okay, the fact that we have surface rust is already an indicator that 15 to 25 years has gone by and that every connection is suspect.
Well, what I would have a question on is, let's say we're out inspecting a fire escape. It's been painted, but they painted over it, and maybe they got a couple guys down on the corner to paint it.
Yeah, it happens.
How am I supposed to verify that there's not structural damage due to the rust?
It's perfect. You'll see some of the things that was talked about today, because when you see quarter inch or half inch of rust in the tread and it's nicely painted,
Well, you could still, yeah, you'd still be able to visually see the
Still be able
rust
to
through the
visually see it.
paint.
so that's the main thing. It's like seeing on alarm systems dangling wires.
Yeah.
It's like seeing on a sprinkler head it bent out of position. It's like something happened here. Let's talk about live load testing. We'll go quickly through this. This is what happens when you live load test your fire escapes, and that is you basically use people and they die. So a woman was having a party with her boyfriend on the neighbor's roof. They lived on the right side, and they went to party on the neighbor's roof on the left side because their window happened to go right to the neighbor's deck. So this happened in Boston. They're partying. The phone rings. They're slightly inebriated. She decides to go get the phone. She misses it, and she falls 5 stories to her death. So when missing pieces keep you from, getting back on the fire escape, people die. This is another case that we were involved in where, a fire escape collapsed. They were selling the building. So it was the seller and the real estate agent, the buyer and the real estate agent, plus one of the condo association. They're up there talking about the fire escape, and the whole thing collapsed, and they only fell 12 feet. And they were all able to grab their phones and call who?
Their attorneys.
Their attorneys, who then called 911. But everybody got sued. There's another case we worked on in Iowa. 3 college students up there watching the fireworks on the 3rd floor. Fire escape was not properly attached. It fell to the ground. That's their blood. What happened was the owner of the building had the fire escape fixed by his maintenance guys, who instead of through bolting it back to the building, they put a lag screw into it. This is us in a field about 8 blocks away where they put all the fire escape pieces.
This looks like the leg.
So this is fire escape CSI. And that's when we found the missing pieces on the ground. And that's when we found the lag screw. And that's all lawyers all around us. So they tried to destroy the evidence, but we found the evidence. They put the fire escape back. They put it back wrong. But basically they're now, this thing is again, wrapped up in court cases, takes 5 to 10 years for these things to go through, and they usually lose, because once you prove that something is done wrong to the fire escape, and when they put it back, did you properly load test it? The answer is no, you lose immediately. There's another form of load testing that happens every day. People watch parades on fire escapes that were never load tested. So can you imagine the kind of chaos you'd have when those 30 people all fall to the ground? It will happen. When? We're just waiting for it. Back in the day, it was in, when you had no air conditioning, guess how you cool down? You slept on the fire escape. Firefighters a lot of times use fire escapes to get people out during medical emergencies because for some reason they can't get them out the front door, whatever it may be. This top corner picture is a picture of a guy's repairing fire escapes. One of our members out of Chicago lost his dad a few years ago, 7 stories, while he was doing exactly that. Fixing the fire escape, and it all fell out from underneath him. Fire escapes can save lives or take them. There's some more ways you can die on a fire escape now. Getting your wedding shot, going upstairs to speak with a neighbor. A lot of college students smoke on the fire escape or put their planters outside because you can't smoke in the building. You need your little garden out in the fire escape, so many ways to get hurt. Who inspects fire escapes? Nationally, structural engineers can inspect fire escapes. Second, some states will allow architects to inspect. Sometimes people believe city officials inspect fire escapes and they don't. They write violations, but they don't inspect fire escapes. They see things that generate violations. And last is fire escape inspectors. We're kindly reminded every day that in LA, we're not fire escape inspectors. We are fire escape inspectors in every city in the United States, except LA. We are Reg 4 testers. You use the word inspector, all hell will rain down on you. You are a Reg 4 tester, but every other state we are fire escape inspectors or fire escape engineers. So the difference is that we inspect the entire fire escape system. So Reg 4 testers only do the ladder. You must bring in a structural engineer or another company that does fire escape engineer, and is a fire escape engineer to inspect the rest of the system and the ladder. So every now and then we have a situation, and this is a perfect example. Truck hit. Who needs to show up? Reg 4 tester or a fire escape inspection company?
What city are you in?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it does, because in LA, it's gotta be a Reg 4 tester.
Does not
Anywhere else,
matter.
it has to be a fire escape
Nope.
inspector.
Well, if a truck hit it,
Truck hit it. You got a truck hit. Hey, a trash truck just ripped my fire escape down to the ground. What do you call it?
yeah, you need an engineer.
You need an engineer. In the past, it would always be a Reg 4 tester showing up there and scheduling. You're scheduling a fail. You know, like, oh, you're just scheduling a moment that you're going to go down there. It's not going to pass. So if the evidence is already there that it's not going to pass, it's already starting to be the Department of Public Safety activity. Can you be involved in it? Of course you can, right from the get-go. So you're just saying as a company, say, hey, what happened? It got hit by a truck? Okay, we're not scheduling a Reg 4 test. We're gonna be scheduling an inspection by either a structural engineer or a fire escape engineer company. Pick either one. Because now, Reg 4 testing for you is next year. We need to get this under control. It's gotta get a permit pulled on it. We gotta speak with the city official and see what he wants. And I already know what he wants. The authority having jurisdiction, which is who?
Fire department usually.
Or building safety.
See? Truck hit. The department having authority. Who's it now?
Yeah, that's building safety.
Building safety wants you to do what?
Repair and certify.
So certify comes in two ways. Which one do you want?
Well, you want the structural certification.
Which happens, give me that guarantee. How's it come?
Right.
Load test.
Yeah.
Load test or
Refurbish.
other evidence of strength. Can I spot repair? Because, I got there, man, the only thing was this ladder got a little bit of a tweaky on it. So I fixed that for $2. And I got a 10-story building. What now needs to happen?
Load test.
Load test what?
The whole thing.
The whole thing. Why? Because the law said that. Or refurbish the whole thing and don't load test it. Why? Other evidence of strength. So right away, fire escape pass or fail? Same fire escape.
Failed.
Why?
Evidence of structural damage.
Where?
Rust.
Yeah, I'm gonna scrape and paint that.
That looks good to me.
No, this is a test to basically say, if you are gonna leave here knowing that all this rust came from one of these connections,
Right.
now that you have that knowledge, pass or fail?
Failed.
Because?
Because you're showing rust that comes from inside.
From internal rust. Your surface rust takes 15 to 25 years to get there. So you haven't, I know right now, looking at your fire escape, you haven't touched this for 15 to 25 years, depending whether it's on the south side, rain side, but at least 15 to 25 years to let it rust this much, and all your surface rust came from the deterioration of an internal connection. So now I already know, because you've let it go this far, that all your connections are suspect. I can prove that. So You can drive up to a job and immediately pass or fail. And they're gonna give you a document that says, oh, but the fire inspector said, scrape and paint it. What are you gonna tell them?
We're not gonna accept that.
That you have previous knowledge of the rest.
Right. So you can say, no problem, so you can't offend the client. You're not gonna be educating a client. Say, that's not a problem. I have to speak with your inspector anyway. Because before I can do anything for you, I must qualify myself with the inspector. How's that sound? I must review the violation to make sure that what I'm about to do for you is gonna remove your violation. How's that sound? When you speak with the inspector now, we're no longer the client, they say, hey, you've got a violation here that says scrape and paint. I have evidence that that fire escape has all the connections to suspect because the client let it rust for 15 to 25 years. And that only happens when the internal connections expand and break, and then it grows to the surface area. So right now we have a structural issue that's gonna involve the sub-code official, the public safety. What's that fire prevention guy gonna say to you?
Thank you.
Refurbish it or repair and load test.
Well, he's not gonna say anything because he's no longer involved.
Okay.
He's gonna turn it over.
He's gonna say, really? It's gonna be, yep, this is a life safety situation, and it's gonna require either a load test or other satisfactory evidence to the public safety guy before he'll return it back into service. So it's no longer Reg 4. He's gonna say what to you? Fire prevention guy.
Thanks, yeah.
Thanks to you. Right? So, you gotta be careful on this because what happens on these things is every now and then you do get a letter. So the reason I got this call is because the secretary received a letter from this engineer. You know what he said about this fire escape? He said, it's fine. You gotta fix the steel door, fix one of the treads, and give it a scrape and paint, and I'll sign off on it. So did this guy walk this fire escape, or did he drive up and roll down his window and collect the check?
Way to lie.
Okay.
Right, right.
I got this other one I did in Chicago. I was sent there to go and get a bid on the job, and this is the report that I got. And it said, the fire escapes are fine. I condemned the fire escapes, 4 of them on a building that was, I think had about 150 units. So who's right? This guy that spent 8 years in college? Or this guy that, just knows fire escapes? So you have to be careful because every now and then, they don't take it seriously. And the reason being is because they probably got paid very little money. Because the guys that can inspect fire escapes don't, because it's the trash can of the industry. They can't make thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on it. So what they do, it's 6 times the work, 1/6 the pay. So you know what they do? They do what's called drive-by opinions. But the way we're doing things now, and they have to fill out that confidence test, you think they're gonna be doing cheap drive-by opinions? If all 3 codes say a critical examination is required, load tested, or other evidence of strength, either way, give me a guarantee on a piece of paper. You think a structural engineer will put the word guarantee on one of his documents? Well, now we're saying he has to. This is the bolts and the connections that I found when I got there. This is the confidence test. We generated the first confidence test in the nation. One didn't exist. How do we get there? We got there because Seattle called us in because 3 or 4 guys were smoking on a fire escape that was screwed into the building, a wood structure. And they're having a smoke after, I think it was a baseball game, and then they fell 3 stories to the ground. Nobody died. They all got critically hurt. The lawsuit's ongoing as we speak. But when we got there, there was no process of inspecting in Seattle. So we gave them a class just like we're doing right here, and we created this confidence test, which they copied all the questions. So if you go to seattle.gov, you download this document, you have a fire escape confidence test. Okay? Notice that general questions, testing and certification, it's all yes, no's, not opinions, yes, no. And the critical part of this is that on this part here, all internal connections are free, 100% free of all internal rust. So let's open up your book. Let's go right to the confidence test. So let's see what this final exam says. The first general questions are just general, about the paint, does it look good? But then see the structural review down here? One of the critical questions that start the critical review, it says, all critical materials, connections, and/or joints are 100% free of all internal rust and/or rot, because we do inspect wood structures. So, and then from there it starts asking, are all the bolts good? Yes. Are all the welds good? Rivets, treads, railings, stringers. Will a structural engineer who has not done his job feel uneasy about such a document? Going down into anchoring devices, number 19 says, are the connections of the anchors into the building sufficient to support the required load test as verified by methods acceptable to the structural engineer? For example, did you do an internal inspection? Did you do a load test? Or did you reinforce or duplicate the connection? Because we're looking for guarantees, right? So everything that's external must be verified in one way, but everything internal must be verified in only two ways. Either you duplicated it or you verified it. Pick one. Because otherwise we're going to order a load test. So, this is the test, page 2, and here's the best part. When we did this in Seattle, Tacoma was in the class, and they added one more. They added a yearly walkthrough. And when you look at this yearly walkthrough, this is done not by a firescape engineer, not by a structural engineer, not by a Reg 4 tester. This is done by the maintenance guy of the building with the fire inspector. And he basically has to know that when he walks and makes everything run again on a yearly inspection of the entire system, so this is not a Reg 4 test, this is because all other states are 5 years, they don't have these yearly tests. They want to know all the bolts and supports damaged or not. Is the paint in good condition? And all the moving parts of the ladders, doors and windows, everything operational? If it's yes, just click it along, sign here, and hand this. So in other states, this is almost like a Reg 4 test. You know what I'm saying? For the ladder part, but it's like walking the whole thing. But they want that from the owner.